It was just another mortal Monday. That's right, September 13th, 1993. Excitement had built to a fervor over the course of weeks, if not months, as two words coursed through gaming pop culture. And no, Mortal Monday were not the two words, nor were they Sega or Nintendo. Blood and sweat, well, were talked about all the time, were not the two words either. It wasn't graphics and visuals, gameplay and controls, though each would play its part over this argument. We heard two words such as Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Gear, and Game Boy, though these weren't the important words either. These words beat out many others that we still talk about today: controversy, violence, fatality, babality, toasty. Nope, everybody knows these two words, the words that were everywhere: TV commercials, radio ads, comic books, every gaming magazine, every non-gaming magazine. These two words were everywhere. It was just another Mortal Monday, and it brought into our homes one of the most controversial games of its time. Today, we're going to be taking a look back at Mortal Monday and your memories around the Mortal Kombat franchise, starting with the arcade version and working our way through a few of the modern ones. We're going to be discussing console wars, controversy in video games, console exclusivity, and a host of other things too. So let's take a look back and have some meaningful conversations while doing so. I'm your host, David Casson. Come and join me as we take a trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I hope that these words find you well. Today we're going to do something a little different. It's not going to be so much as the touchy-feelies, but more so facts and information. We're going to be talking about a game that has had a huge impact on all of us as gamers. Absolutely huge impact, but not so much on our feelings, but more so on the way the industry has had to adapt as a whole. Of course, we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat. But before we hop into our time machine and take a little time hop back, allow me to introduce my co-host back again for another episode. Today we're going to be talking about a bunch of shit that happened before he was born, but just barely, and then some. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother, Rob Casson.
Hello, everyone. Want to say thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to be back for another week.
Rob, people are listening to us. Did you know that?
Well, you seem to tell me every day, so yes, I did.
I mean, I can't help but be excited. I see that little listen and subscription number go up. I mean, that's why we're here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's wonderful to hear about everyone listening and subscribing. And, I just got to say, we hope that those of you who are listening and subscribing are able to come join us on our Discord. Give us some stories. Give us some more things to talk about. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, guys. If you haven't joined our Discord yet, you can find the link at our website, memorycardlane.com, along with the notes to our shows, a little bit about ourselves, and most importantly is that link to the Discord. So come join us at memorycardlane.com, join us on our official Discord, and converse with us. We know you're listening. Let's come talk. Let's have conversation. Rob and I have been talking, and we'd like to have some people on our podcast too, have these conversations here on the podcast. So join us. We'd love to have you. I think that about sums it up.
I would say so, absolutely.
So, I mean, I know people are listening. How are you feeling about the podcast so far?
I'm definitely feeling good. I mean, seems some people are enjoying it, and definitely hope that we can get a few more bites with this one. It's definitely going a lot better than I would have envisioned at this point, and I just look forward, as I've said in the past, to where we're going to keep going in the future.
Good answer. Way to talk it up. You a Mortal Kombat fan, Rob?
I am a fan, although I'm not a very good one.
No. Are you not good in that you're not a good fan to Mortal Kombat? Or are you not good in that you suck at Mortal Kombat?
I am pretty awful at the game, Dave.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely, I'm bad at it. Rob, which Mortal Kombat do you remember? What's the earliest one for you?
I would have to say it would probably be Mortal Kombat 3. I believe that was the first one for the PlayStation, but I know it was definitely on the PlayStation. That was the first time I was able to play this game and see what it was all about.
How many have you played since then?
I don't remember by the numbers, but I have definitely played on the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, Xbox One. So the most recent I can tell you is Mortal Kombat X, but I have definitely played a few between 3 and X.
Haven't touched 11 yet?
I have not, no.
Yeah, me either. I think the last Mortal Kombat I played is this little, probably X on my iPhone, my little App Store one. But I haven't actually played a Mortal Kombat title in, I honestly don't even know. It's funny, when I was going through this and going through all the Mortal Kombat titles, I can't remember 4 for the life of me. Do you remember Mortal Kombat 4 at all?
I mean, obviously by name, but if you'd tell me the plot, I might or might not.
Oh, plot. You mean there's actually a plot to these games?
Have you never played the story mode, Dave?
Look, the majority of my Mortal Kombat history is with the first 3. There isn't much story to the first 3. I realize it exists. I've seen the movie, but I really haven't spent too much time on the modern Mortal Kombat. So I'd have to say, no, I don't know much of the story. But I've heard it's ludicrous, to be honest with you.
It can be, yes, if you ever actually pay attention to it. I've only done it on one or two of them. I forget which ones off the top of my head. It definitely wasn't X, but basically there's a tournament to save the world.
Well, that's all of them. But I understand as it's gone on, the tournaments have changed. Who's in charge has changed. There's been a time reset. I love time travel stuff. And apparently, there's all sorts of weird time stuff now that really polarizes the community. I'm really curious on all that.
Well, we'll definitely have to get a little more deep into the lore and things. But, while we were doing this research, I did come across something that I'm not quite familiar with. It seems to be pretty common. I wanted to ask you about it. Do you remember Mortal Monday?
I do, absolutely do. I played the original Mortal Kombat on an arcade machine itself. There was this little party store. It's about a mile down from the house. And, it's funny because we were talking recently on one of our other episodes about what you spent your lawn cutting money on. And it was buying video games for the house, right? If I remember correctly.
Well, I was buying at the time the Nintendo GameCube and games for that.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So I didn't buy as many games. When I would get lawn mowing money, I would get on my bike and ride down to this party store, buy a candy bar, and break the rest of it into quarters. And this party store had a single arcade cabinet in it at the time. And among the games that it had was a Mortal Kombat machine, and no one gave a crap who played what. It wasn't like it is now, and the kids can't play the graphic games. Well, I mean, kids aren't supposed to play graphic games, but that's definitely out the window. I don't even know why I said that. But I would sit there and play whatever arcade game they set up. I probably spent too much money playing arcade games there instead of I should have been buying games for the home console. I probably have a nice collection now, but I spent a lot of money there. But arcade games were cool. They are cool now. Do you ever go and play arcades these days?
The last time I went to an arcade was probably with you. Well, actually, the last time I went to an arcade would be Dave and Buster's. Other than that, it's not the most common thing around here. I do remember there was the one in Ann Arbor that you took me to that unfortunately was flooded a few years ago.
Pinball Pete's.
That is the one. And just it's not as easy to find them anymore. And even if they were easy to find, with the way you can play games online nowadays and spending the money, it's not something you want to do as often. And a lot of the games you can get at home. And it's still a fun atmosphere and something to do, but with the scarcity of them, it's just a lot more difficult to go and do on a Friday night.
Yeah, well, and the one I remember playing all the time in our hometown was called the Butterfly, and it doesn't even exist anymore. So
Can't say I've ever even heard of it.
it's that big dome, the golf dome. You and I have probably been there. That the one down, is it Van Dyke and like 15 Mile, big golfing
I'm pretty
dome.
sure that's gone.
Yeah. I don't know. So you go to Dave and Buster's, right?
Yep.
What do you like about the arcades?
Well, there's a lot of different games to go and play. It's a lot of the racing simulators are fun, the jet simulators. It's a lot of different things that you might not be able to do at home. I mean, I don't necessarily have a nice racing setup at home or a nice flight stick with a bunch of different games rolling around with those simulators. And also then just the different, like, I can't think, Dead or Alive games, or just you have the gun pointing at the screen, kind of like the old NES Duck Hunt game, but
Yeah, like
obviously a lot more.
Time Crisis.
Exactly, thank you. That was the one I was thinking, like Time Crisis.
I
So it's
love
a lot
Time
of
Crisis.
it's a phenomenal game series. And just the experience of being able to like hold the gun, point and shoot, it's a lot more immersive than just, holding a controller and using your joysticks to point and then pull a trigger on the controller to shoot, as opposed to actually, here's your gun, you're pointing down sight and pulling the actual trigger.
How stupid do we look, though? I mean, let's be honest. Time Crisis, you have to put your foot on the pedal to, I think it's either to pop up or to pop down. But do you actually do it? Like, do you actually duck like your character does in the game?
I can't say that I do. I mean, maybe I have once or twice when I was really into it, but most of the time it's more of just, that's one of the few things it's like, yeah, I could kind of do without this. It could be a little more realistic, but who knows? Maybe in the future, as arcade games get better and they incorporate VR, you actually will be able to start ducking up and down.
Oh no, I duck up and down. If I'm going to go play that game, I'm going to commit to playing that game. I look like an idiot, I'm sure, but I'm committed, I'm telling you.
Normally, by the time I'm getting to Time Crisis, I'm much too tired to be doing that. I've clearly been dancing way too long on Dance Dance Revolution.
Oh yeah, I wasted tons of money on that one too. You're absolutely right about going there and getting to do things that you can't do at home, in terms of the racing rigs. And that's one of the things I like the most about it too, because now you have the racing rigs and you have the shooters with the cabinets that are loud and they vibrate and they shake, and there's just so much different things and technologies and so on and so forth that you have in arcade. And it's always been like that. Arcades have always been excited. You go to the arcade and you've got better graphics than you have at home, and you've got the moving cabinet. And heck, I remember at one time there was a hologram game that the games were projected on a hologram, and it was the coolest thing ever to me. Sure, it was a gimmick. I mean, the hologram didn't do anything special. The game wasn't based around it. It just projected the characters as holograms in front of you. It was a little game, and I think they did it with Dragon Lair once, but this was a game I vaguely remember a Prospector. I'm sure someone out there knows the game. I can't remember it for the life of me. But the arcades were always exciting and pushing the limits, and you could always go and do things that you can't do at home. I loved arcade cabinets. I really genuinely did. And I still do. I'm not gonna lie, I get excited anytime I get to take my nephew to Chuck E. Cheese's. It's the only excuse I have to go and play in an arcade cabinet around here. So, I'll take every chance I can to go and play video games. And it's not against the rules, so you are allowed in Chuck E. Cheese without a kid, but people look at you weird when you do it.
I would probably agree to that, yes.
just so you know, it's not against the rules. You can go have a nice lunch at Chuck E. Cheese's. They do serve pizza. It's okay. And you can go play video games. But they look at you weird if you don't have a kid with you. Lucky for me, I have a nephew I can steal, who I enjoy spending time with. I don't just steal him to play video games. Trust me. I enjoy his company. He's a cool kid. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave. I'm sure you're just saying that to save face now because is finally out.
Chuck E. Cheese. It's cool. It's cool. So back to Mortal Monday. I remember Mortal Monday. I do. It was exciting when they announced that Mortal Kombat was coming from arcade to consoles. And I mean, it was everywhere. It was on TV. It was on the radio, because we still actually listened to radio back then. It was in every single gaming magazine. It was on the inside cover of tons of comic books. I'm sure I could go open some and you'd find Mortal Kombat ads. I mean, it was literally everywhere. And that's honestly, that's how I stumbled across wanting to do Mortal Kombat for today's episode. Whenever I go back and I look at prominent game releases for the week, I find notable games or not so notable games sometimes too. And I try to look for people's memories and find interesting stories within those memories. And when I was looking up Mortal Kombat, Mortal Monday was one of the very first threads I stumbled across. And I got to go back to Game Facts. We talked about Game Facts last week, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, good old Game Facts with its ASCII game guides. Can't beat them, right?
No, you cannot.
Hey, I gotta ask you a question. Have you revisited? No, actually, let me rephrase this because that's not the way I want to take it. How is the Grand Theft Auto stock market doing these days, Rob?
It is doing quite well, I've heard. I've yet to start investing myself, but the days are getting closer to where I can finally do so.
But you spent that time looking up a guide on there. You tell me you didn't learn enough to start investing already?
No, it's just that the timing to get investing in the market hasn't quite come yet. We have to wait for stocks to die off, if you will.
Are we having a video game podcast or are we starting an investment podcast?
Well, investment in video games. So take it how you will.
Don't we do that almost every day when we buy games?
Do you really think we're buying them for value or just for the memories and the feelings that they're going to create?
I mean, we buy them for entertainment, but the memories come alongside it.
So I guess if you're talking entertainment value, you would be correct. But monetary value, most I'm sure we're not buying now, assuming they'll be worth $1 million in 50 years.
Yeah, that's true. I was on eBay the other day, and I always like to look up, I just have video games as a general search on eBay, and I like to sort it by auctions ending soonest. Every so often, I'll find a stupid deal on a game I want or don't want, but it's a stupid deal, and I'm incredibly impulsive, and I'll just jump at it because it's a stupid good deal. I saw a boxed copy of Dr. Mario that was graded. It was like an 8 out of 10 and it was going for like $700.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is expensive.
Yeah. So, kids, if you're out there listening, take care of your video games. They can be incredibly valuable someday. Probably not, because the world has changed. And now that we have digital copies of everything, physical copies don't have as much value. Or they might someday, because as we stop making physical copies of everything, people may actually want them. I don't know how it's going to go. But take care of your
Well,
stuff. Always take care of your stuff.
you also have to take into consideration the fact that some older games where there is a physical and digital, the digital copy may have lost licensing rights. So if you don't have a physical copy, you may never be able to access it again.
That's a very valid point. Well, and we're going to touch on this as we cruise through this episode. There may not even be physical copies at some point because the next generation, we've got a version of each console that doesn't even have a disk drive.
Very true. We'll see.
And,
We'll have to see where it goes.
and just on topic, I've been looking to build a new PC. I've had my PC for a better part of a decade. It's probably about time to upgrade, it as a bulk. I've done little pieces here and there, but it's time to build a new build in its entirety. And for the first time ever, I'm not sure if I'm going to put a disk drive in it because I couldn't tell you the last time that I actually touched the disk drive on my computer. In
Yeah,
fact,
I haven't had one on mine for a few years myself.
I just opened it up and it's empty. I half expected to find like some old AOL disk or something in there, but it's completely empty.
Would not have been surprised.
I know, right? Right? Those good old AOL discs. We used to get them so in such abundance at Best Buy that we used to use them for target practice. So yes, back to game facts, back to game facts, back to game facts. And I stumbled across a thread titled Remember Mortal Monday 1993, and it was started by someone with the username Saxon. And his comment reads, I assume I'm the only one who remembers Mortal Monday, right? It was such a huge day, and everyone wanted the Genesis version because it had blood, while the SNES version had sweat. Now, this is quickly followed by another comment from Like Wild Lyric 12, who wrote, Good time, dot, dot, dot. I wanted the SNES version, though, because the graphics were far superior. Also, Sub-Zero had that sweet freeze and smash fatality. Rob, have you ever played the original Mortal Kombat at all?
I do not believe so, no.
No? Did you even know that there were two versions?
I was unaware of that.
Nowadays we have a lot of console exclusivity. You have PlayStation, for instance, that will, have a character that maybe the Xbox wouldn't. But once upon a time, that was pretty unheard of. I mean, there were differences in the versions because the systems were physically different in their hardware, but there wasn't a game that was just you literally had one version here and a different version otherwise. Can't think of a lot of other games that was the case back then. and it's a topic like that literally that's what everyone talks about, you know. Right after that comment, there's a Dalsim Rocks from Street Fighter. Dalsim, I don't even know how to say it. I'm butchering it. There's some guy out there that's about to roast me on social media. I say that every single week, and it happens, and it's gonna happen with that one. So this dude writes, I envied the Genesis version's fatalities and blood, but in the end, I preferred my SNES version for the sound, graphics, and controls. And of course, the thread continues going back and forth for quite some time, with everyone chipping in on their favorite version among things. And this got me thinking, the console wars, different versions weren't very common back then, but it's really prevalent these days, is it not?
Oh my god, you've got to be kidding me. Of course it is. You have the Xbox fanboys on one side, the PlayStation fanboys on the other side, the poor souls who like the Nintendo Switches, and then of course the smartest people, the PC Master Race.
Oh, come on. We're not trying to start anything here. Let's not get the flame war going. But I'm just trying to say in hindsight that I realize, you know, there were probably earlier wars before it, but I don't really remember anything that was this drastic before Nintendo and Sega. I mean, there had to have been wars before that, didn't there? Can you imagine that in the Atari age there was a console war back then?
I mean, you would have to think that there would be with the release of games, considering the original consoles, it was a rush to who could get out the technology the first, or who could get out the most popular game first. But it's not, from everything that I've heard and from mom, dad growing up, and even yourself, it's not something you hear about. You didn't have as extremists on both sides. There was no, oh, the Atari is the greatest thing ever, and you're an Xbox, and you're or rather, sorry, you don't hear about people saying, "Oh, Atari is the greatest thing ever," and if you have a Magnavox and her.
Yeah, no, that's true. But, you know, gaming wasn't as much pop culture than it was. But I can't imagine that there wasn't someone who was like, the Atari's better than the Magnavox and the Intellivision's better than the ColecoVision. You know, we've spent some time talking about Nintendo games, and Nintendo had the Sega Master System, but I don't remember them pitting them as much against one another because Nintendo absolutely had capitalized on the market. I mean, it's credited for single-handedly reviving the video game market after it crashed, and I don't really think that there was much of a in between. But then we came to the 16-bit era here in the what's this third generation, I think, and you had SNES and Sega, and that's the first time I genuinely remember both sides going at one another. And it just might have been where I was in my life. You know, that's, you know, in terms of memory and you know how old I was and how it, you know, things imprinted on me. I just may not be remembering any other, but I genuinely don't think that there was as much of a deal before then. And then for you, you were born during the 32-bit era, so all this is a little bit before your time. What do you remember about console wars when you were growing up?
I mostly remember it started around the Xbox and PlayStation 2 era with the release of Halo as the big ticket item, the number one reason to get an Xbox. I was always envious because growing up, I never got the Xbox, and it wasn't until the Xbox 360. And of course, around that time, you're talking PlayStation 3. So you have, once again, everyone on the PlayStation 3 side, oh, we have the superior console, everything's so much better here on the PlayStation side. And of course, me and all of my friends ended up going with Xbox because at the time, Halo was the number one game. Everyone wanted to play Halo. We all wanted to go online and defeat the Covenant, defeat the Flood, whatever we could do, whatever game we were playing at the time, whichever Halo version it was, that's what we wanted to do. So for my friend group, it was Xbox had the superiority. And it's funny because even back then, I make the joke earlier about the Nintendo Switch, but even back then, Nintendo has always kind of fallen to the wayside. They have their obvious Mario, their console exclusive big ticket items, but Nintendo always, even if they do very well, they're always kind of thrown to the back when you're talking the console war because it's always Sony or Microsoft who has the better one, and everyone wants to forget about Nintendo and not realize, well, Nintendo has been around a lot longer and has stayed in the game for as long as they have because they know what they're doing.
Well, Nintendo's been around longer, yes. For me, it's really interesting hearing you say that because you just said that Nintendo is, but I don't know, back burner or hiding back there. You made a reference, something like that. But it's interesting hearing you say that because of your perspective, because you're probably right. Because in the PlayStation and Xbox era, Nintendo really didn't have comparisons. And then as we kept going into the PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, Xbox One era, Nintendo has never really competed. But in the 8-bit and 16-bit eras, when I was a kid and playing game, Nintendo was the thing, man. It was the happening. And so my feelings about Nintendo are very different. It's almost disappointing to me that they don't have a place of equality among, Microsoft and Xbox now because of, how much we held them on a pedestal when I was younger. Does that make sense?
A little bit, yes.
Although I do think the Switch has been making strides towards that mentality once Nintendo got out of its shell and said, hey, we're going to start letting people make games for our system no matter what. The graphic games, like now we have The Witcher on there. I do think Nintendo is really trying to make strides towards finding themselves on comparative ground with the other two.
Well, Dave, I do have to say Nintendo is definitely doing well. They finally have a console that can support Skyrim.
Is that the golden standard of video game systems now? If they can bring Skyrim to your system, you're good to go?
I mean, we are talking bringing a quite a few year old title to a newer console. So I would say, need to give them a little credit.
We're going to be playing games with chips in our brain in like 30 years. And they're going to be, Skyrim's going to be a launch title because they're never going to let it die.
See, we're all just going to be able to experience what it's like to take an arrow to the knee.
my first thought is you went to arrow to the knee, and my first thought is definitely more so I wake up from a day and the guy looks at me, he goes, oh good, you're awake. And we're cruising along on the cart to God knows where. Man,
happy places.
I know that'd be terrifying, man. The Nord looks at me, hey great, you're awake, and I just look around and I'm like, shit.
And from the sky,
Yep.
a train whistle.
That's shit.
And then all you see is a light blue engine flying towards you.
Oh, good lord. No.
A face of terror plastered on the front. Thomas the Tank Engine has come for you.
We're not doing creepy Thomas. God, that's so weird. I don't know how people got that. Thomas the Tank Engine should be cherished. That is a childhood gem. Don't twist my Thomas the Tank Engine, you weird sadistic people. Ugh.
Favorite mod out there for that game.
Oh, good lord. It's been, 27 years since the original Mortal Kombat came out, and people are still debating which version's better. It's ridiculous. I frequently like to go to the Amazon reviews. We've talked about some of the Amazon reviews on some of the previous episodes. I like to find gems on the Amazon reviews because, there's some funny motherfuckers out there. And there was a Genesis review on, not a Genesis review. There was an Amazon review on the Genesis version in 2014 written by Scott. Hi, Scott, if you're out there. So, 21 years after the game released that reads, far better on the Genesis than Nintendo because of the blood code. Dude, it's 21 years. You're still on about that stupid blood code? And then here's another that's digging his ground as well. The top-rated review on another Genesis resale cartridge by Amazon buyer DK14 reads, the first thing is the graphics. The graphics are actually better than the SNES. When you compare it to, say, Scorpion, for instance, sure, the animation is better, but Sega has more realistic-looking characters, and actually, Ed Boon agrees too. What, dude? This is like the only dude on the face of the earth that thinks that the Genesis has better graphics than the SNES, and then he wants to drag the creator of the series, Ed Boon, through it too? Dude, seriously? Ugh.
But did Ed Boon agree?
I don't know. I couldn't find any. I Googled, I looked, I couldn't find any reference. I'm sure maybe he did. I don't know, but I couldn't find it at all. But then, In comparison, the top-rated review on the Super Nintendo version of the game by Ryan Sill reads, among other things, he goes, "What? You dare criticize an awesome fighting game just because there wasn't blood? What greed!" And then you got the flip side. Kelly writes about being unhappy with the changes. She writes, "This game feels neutered. It is like buying a music album you really like from a great artist, only to find out that you bought the radio edit version instead of the explicit version." Do they even sell radio edit versions anymore? Do you know?
I don't look at a whole lot of CDs.
Do they even sell CDs anymore?
I mean, of course they sell CDs. You can find them, but they're obviously not as prevalent as they were.
When's the last time that you've actually bought music?
It
Uh-huh.
was...
Uh-huh.
No,
See?
hold on. See, here's where is it different. I purchased a CD from a local group from a show that they were doing at a bar that I went to one night. And that was about 2 years ago. So support your local bands.
In the last 2 years, you bought one CD from a local group.
Damn straight.
Your commitment to the local music scene is inspiring to us all.
Well, I don't go out very often. It was coincidental. A friend invited me out to a hard rock metal night at a local bar and got to hear from some local bands. It was actually a pretty cool experience.
I couldn't tell you the last time I bought a CD. I couldn't tell you the last time I haven't listened to music on either YouTube or Spotify or Pandora or Amazon Music or one of the MIDI stations for music that we listen to. I don't even know. I mean, I pay for it. I pay for it in ads. I pay for Amazon Prime. Uh, Pandora loves me, but I couldn't tell you the last time I actually bought a CD. I'm genuinely trying to think right now when the last time I bought a CD. The first Macklemore album, maybe. It's got a cool, like leather cover type thing. I think that's the most modern one. That's a long time ago.
That it is.
I don't know. But so many people bash on the game for that one stupid reason because blood is in one and sweat's in another. Here's another review from Simon that reads, "Graphics and audio are pretty good, far surpassing what the Genesis version was offering and staying true to the arcade version. Gameplay, however, is a failure. Never mind that the fatalities haven't changed and the blood turned to sweat. The actual fighting is stiff and unresponsive." I like how in the same review he goes, "Graphics and audio are good, and it was true to the arcade version, but gameplay is a failure." How does that compute?
I have no idea.
I mean, cool. So I guess he didn't like the arcade version. You know, if it's true to the arcade version and gameplay is a failure, guess you're not a fan of the arcade version. Man, you can't please everyone, you know?
Absolutely not, so why even bother?
And on that note, I think let's take a break.
Hey Dave, are you a Johnny Cage fan?
As a matter of fact, I am, Rob.
Me too. Those early films of his were great, weren't they?
Man, those were some of the craziest fight scenes that I had ever seen. It's so hard to believe that he did his own stunts.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that there are still people that think that he doesn't.
You know what? Forget them, Rob. I still remember the first time I ever saw Seven Poisons. That scene with the ladders, man, that dude is stone cold.
No, man. Stone Cold is when he straight up knocked that dude's skull off with an uppercut and the gist of my fist. Needless to say, that guy got the gist of his fist. And then some.
You know, it's been forever since I've seen any of his movies.
Well, I have good news for you then, Dave.
Yeah, how so?
You can soon rewatch both Seven Poisons and The Gist of My Fist alongside others in the new Johnny Cage Action Video Collection.
Oh, yeah?
That's right, Dave. In the new Johnny Cage Video Collection, you'll find 4 movies: The Gist of My Fist, Cage Match, Aquatic Assault, and Seven Poisons.
Whew. I haven't even thought about Aquatic Assault in ages.
You and everyone else, Dave. In the Johnny Cage Video Collection, you can experience all of the excitement and videos of Johnny Cage's early Hollywood films.
Can I really, though?
You sure can, Dave. And, if you can find it now, there was a limited run that included Earthrealm Girls Gone Wild, found anywhere that bargain bin movies are typically sold. Get yours today.
You know, Rob, I don't think that many gamers here in the United States realize how good we have it with games. You know, censorship is a problem most everywhere. And I mean, we have it here a little bit, but it's not particularly a problem for us. but some people have to deal with censorship on a daily basis. Do you remember any controversial censorship in gaming growing up that's similar to this, where they had to cut the blood out of a game?
I don't remember any myself, but I have looked through a couple of lists of games that have had censorship, and a couple of the ones that I've heard about is with Punch-Out. So supposedly there was a character in the original Punch-Out whose name was Vodka Drakinski, but in
Yeah.
the English release, his name was changed to Soda Popinski.
Yeah, Soda Popinski's I remember that one growing up for sure. What else? That's a funny one. That's a little bit before your time, but that's really funny that you remember that you remember that one. What other ones do you remember?
Another one that I had heard about, I wasn't in, again, I don't know the validity of this, but I was reading, trying to do a little research, trying to find a game I loved playing growing up, Twisted Metal Black. I was trying to find a version of it, and I was doing a little bit of reading about it, and supposedly the European version had the first level altered. And this was because the original game, the player had to shoot down a circling Boeing 747, which would crash into a building that reveals a secret area. Well, with the time of this release, it was after September 11th. So
Yeah.
with that, the level started with the plane already crashed, and of course, the European version didn't have that anymore. So that's another one that, again, I don't know the validity. I've obviously never played these other versions being here in America. So if anyone has proof of this, or obviously the numerous things online, but someone with personal experience, I'd love to hear that. But it's weird to think. And I know another thing, not necessarily just on video games, but in general, is the censorship of Nazi memorabilia in Germany. I did study German a few years in college, and one of the things is that it's illegal to have Nazi memorabilia. So any mention of Nazi or any like portrayal of that in video games is obviously very taboo, and not something that's very easy to get shown over in Germany, because it's not something that they want to be associated with for obvious reasons.
Yeah, there once was a time in which Nazi memorabilia could not be portrayed at all in German games. However, back I don't remember if it was 2018 or 2019. A few years ago they repealed it. They couldn't do it at all, and now that basically that law was repealed, and so now it's allowed. I don't know if it's allowed in its entirety, but that the strictness of that original law is definitely gone. So
I believe the original title that brought that to my awareness was one of the Call of Duty games. I want to say it was the World War II, with the obviously with the Nazi zombies, but I remember one of the games storming the Third Reich, and I'm sure that if that was the game that I'm thinking of, it would have been banned, because you have the swastikas, and obviously you are in the Third Reich. There's a lot of Nazi memorabilia.
yeah, well, in on the topic of having to change the Nazi memorabilia, the entire Wolfenstein series has had to change. In fact, the swastika is a completely different symbol in the German version of the game. It's this weird other geometric shape that I'm sure only exists in that context.
Well, I'm sure that there are other titles, but at the moment, none other come to mind. What about yourself? Do you know of any?
Oh man, the biggest one I remember, speaking of Call of Duty, was Modern Warfare 2. We had that one level, the airport level, the Russian, no Russian. That's what it was called. It was
Of course. How could I forget
I
No
know,
Russian?
I know the one when you had to play as a terrorist shooting up the airport.
That is definitely one. I definitely do remember that is quite a controversial one, and even myself, I do find myself bringing that up every once in a while. So I can't believe it slipped my mind.
Yeah, I googled it. Well, I mean, research Google, whatever the heck you want to call it, because that's what we do for podcasts. I promise we prepare. The developer wanted to give people context for the story in an interesting and engaging manner, but a lot of people had some serious issues with murdering a bunch of civilians. And I say censorship because the level was completely taken out of the Russian version of the game. So if there's versions of this game that exist without the level, do you think that the level was even necessary?
I think to that point, you have to ask it: is any level really necessary, or was there a intent behind creating it? Obviously, with the creation of these levels, the creator had an intent behind it. There was a certain message they wanted to convey, or a certain presence they wanted to set, maybe perhaps foreshadowing through the rest of the game. And while you can take it out and still have the content of the game, you have to ask, is what the entire message that the creator wanted to get across the same with or without that level. While it may be the same, there's obviously going to be some aspect that's not what was intended. You may lose the true emotional value that the creator had intended on you receiving from playing that title.
I think that if a bunch of people have some serious issues with there being a level of a bunch of civilians getting murdered, then that level is absolutely doing what it's supposed to do. It's stupid in every form of media that we want to remove things from media just because they make us feel bad or they make us feel weird. If the goal of that is to make us feel those things, then the media is doing its job. Absolutely, people should have a problem with murdering a bunch of civilians. Absolutely, they should have the problem. But the context is that they wanted to give you the context for the rest of the game because you spend the rest of the game going against the civilian, or not the civilians, going against the terrorists that shot up the airport. So if you're feeling dirty because they shut up the airport, then take that anger and turn it into your motivation for playing through the rest of the game. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I would agree. That's another point with the creator's intent. They obviously want you to create an idea of those characters in your mind, and when you remove that, you no longer have that mentality, and you don't have the same level of involvement or engagement with the game. And we talked about emotional investment in our first episode, and that's exactly, we're right back on that topic. They want you to be emotionally involved, and they want you to feel rage and sadness and sorrow, and use that throughout the rest of the game. And you might not think, oh, this is a shooter game. There's not a whole lot to it. You point and you shoot. But when you really take the time and look at what the creators put into the game and the messages they were trying to convey, you realize there's a lot deeper of intent behind what they created.
I hate when we neuter things because it makes us feel, period. That's the end of the sentence. I get that a lot of people have trouble with their feelings. They have trouble expressing their feelings. They have trouble expressing their emotion. There's people that will shit all over, say, romantic movies because they are incapable of feeling those feelings towards another human being. And there's people that will shit all over, movies that depict murder and depict cruelty towards people and this, and they shit on it and they want to edit it and they want to get rid of it. And it's so frustrating because for much of that media, that's the goal. The goal is to make people feel those things. And the artists did their job and they did it appropriately if those people feel those things. And they just want to get rid of it because it makes them feel uncomfortable. Life is uncomfortable. Suck it up, Buttercup. The world doesn't revolve around you. I mean, you're supposed to feel bad with the good. That's the point. I mean, everything's not all butterflies and sunshine and cupcakes. Man, I love a cupcake. I could use a cupcake right now.
Reminding me that I am hungry.
Oh, it's just so stupid. People that just, and it's such the problem with the world today is that everyone has such a singular mindset and they don't want to allow anyone else to have a different worldview. It plays out every day on our political world stage. I hate getting political. I'm not political. I'm not registered in a party. I hate partisan politics, and I hate partisan politics because life isn't as simple as one party or the other, or one set of beliefs or the other set of beliefs. We are all human beings with a varied life experience and varied opinions, and it is so stupid to assume that you could just tidy up your whole set of beliefs into one title. I mean, come on.
Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. At the end of the day, we are all gamers.
Way to reel me in. Way to reel me in. I started to be the old boomer on his soapbox. Way to reel me in. All right, back on topic. While we're talking about censorship in games in particular, I did a little bit of research because I couldn't remember any other games in which blood was removed, but there was quite a few from what I understand. Back in the same generation, we had Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 2 Alpha that it was removed. In fact, blood was wiped clean from all the cutscenes in Street Fighter Alpha 2. A blood splash was changed to an explosion in Final Fight. Do you remember Final Fight at all, Rob?
It does not sound familiar to me, no.
I think we have a new one now. Don't we have a Final Fight 4? No, what did they just release? It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up, and we just got a fourth one on Game Pass and that. Oh, it's gonna kill me. Absolutely kill me. I can't remember for the life of me.
Are you thinking about Cuphead, Dave?
No, no. I wish we had a fourth Cuphead. The first Cuphead was awesome. God, that those people are creative. Oh man, that. Talk about games. You know, we briefly have conversations about games that are art. That game, work of art. Ugh. Back to censorship. A Drop of Blood was removed from a title screen in Super Castlevania 4. In Zombies Ate My Neighbors, blood was changed to purple ooze for the North American release because apparently the Japanese people can deal with blood and Americans are sissies and we can't. Ooh, and you know, I learned something interesting that I never knew in the scheme of things. So in the Japanese version of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Ganon and Ganondorf bled red, but in
Hold
our
on.
version, yeah,
You're telling me that their blood was red in that game? I swear in ours it's green.
it is indeed green. It was changed to green for the North American stuff, which my whole world perspective has changed because I've always thought Ganondorf as some weird lizard creature who has green blood, but apparently even back then he had red blood. So
I thought it was just because he was green.
maybe you know this crap is still going on today. Censorship, maybe not so much for North American audiences, but the Japanese version of The Witcher 3 was edited down. The gore and the violence was toned down a little bit, or maybe a lot of bit. I don't know. There's no dial. It's not like they said, "Hey, we went from a 10 to a 6." I don't know. They just toned it down. So who's the prude now, Japan? You know, more recently to the Mortal Kombat titles in Mortal Kombat versus DC universe, they had to edit 2 fatalities to get the rating they wanted here in North America. Did you play Mortal Kombat versus DC?
I have not yet.
Do you have it?
No.
I could swear you bought it for me and I never opened it, but maybe I bought it for me and never opened it. I don't even think I own it anymore. I think I sold it. There's a certain period in which games that aren't open sit in my library that I'm like, I think I need to gift this to someone who's actually going to use it. And I think that hit the list.
Perhaps.
I don't see it on my shelf at all. Nope, negatory ghostwriter. It's gone.
Well, glad to know my gift went so well used.
I am ridiculous with my backlog of games. I mean, just I am ludicrous. It's embarrassing. It really is. You know, on the topic of back, you know, since we're on censorship, we're lucky. We're lucky that they even had the luxury of editing those fatalities to get a rating here in North America. And the you know what? Let's talk about the rating because I started this episode and I wanted to talk about how Mortal Kombat has impacted us as an entire gaming collective. There wasn't always an entertainment software rating board, the ESRB. That didn't exist when I was a kid. I don't think that you probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably don't remember a time in which it didn't exist, right?
I do not.
Yeah. This game, Mortal Kombat, along with another game that we can briefly talk about called Night Trap, were the 2 games that were put in front of a Senate committee. I think it was 93, 94. And because people were debating people were debating morals when it comes to video games. They were debating video game violence and sexual portrayals in video games and all that bad stuff that video games supposedly have. And they were debating it. And so, you know, because it's the most important thing on the face of the earth and they have nothing better to do, our politicians decided to hold, you know, Senate hearings on the impact that these games were having on the country. Kids, country, I don't even know. And nothing really came from the hearings, but as a result of everything that happened, the ESRB was formed, basically. So realistically, I guess you can put Mortal Kombat together as the reason that we do have an entertainment safety rating board. You know what I mean?
It could very well be that reason.
Now, here's the deal. There would have always been a Mortal Kombat, even if it wasn't Mortal Kombat. And I think Mortal Kombat is awesome. And we can talk about, and we will talk about, you know, violence in games and stuff like that. If not as this conversation progresses, there are plenty of other games that this conversation is going to come up. But let's be honest. the world has changed, and there was always going to be a Mortal Kombat. And there was always going to be a need for something like the ESRB to respond to it. This just happened to be the catalyst. Right time, right place, I guess. Or wrong time, wrong place, I guess, depending how you look at it. You know what I mean?
True. It all depends on perspective.
Well, I mean, they were everywhere. You can't beat media coverage like being on every news station because the United States government is debating your very existence.
Agreed.
It was crazy. I don't know. So we have the ESRB, that's the impact. We get ratings, and we're lucky to have that because in other countries, they may not even get censored versions. They might just get games that are banned outright. You talked about Germany not allowing Nazi memorabilia, but in Germany, there's a law against high impact gory violence, which is like every AAA title here in the States. Now, little Wikipedia and Googling says that the ban doesn't apply to digital games and that adults can still get them. But there are a ton of video games that are officially banned by the government in Germany. Almost every Call of Duty, Crackdowns, the Dead Rising game, the first 2 Gears of War games, every single Grand Theft Auto game, Left 4 Dead, all the Mortal Kombats, the Resident Evil series, the Saints Row series. I mean, like literally any game that has high impact gory violence. We see that all the time in video games, do we not?
Oh, absolutely, we do.
So officially, many of these games are just banned outright in Germany. Saudi Arabia, for instance, has banned a few games for excessive sex scenes. Pakistan has banned a few games, probably Call of Duty, for poor portrayals of its people as terrorists. I think, though, that what's most interesting to me are the recent games that were banned in China. Have you heard about those?
Well, I did hear briefly about Animal Crossing, and it's weird. I never would have thought something like Animal Crossing would get banned, but it's actually interesting why. And it seems that it's because people have been using the custom pattern tool to post anti-government messages in game.
Yeah, well, the Chinese government, from my understanding, is known to shut down any and all criticisms of itself. So, I'm sure Facebook is banned and this social network is banned and that social network is banned. But when there's a will, there's a way. When people are backed into a corner like that, they will find a way to circumvent things. Am I wrong?
No, you are not. They always, where there's a will, there's a way.
People are amazingly creative. That is a gift that we were all given, and they will use it in the most amazing ways. And so, yes, Animal Crossing may be the most basic game. You wouldn't think it's the type of game that it can antagonize people, but hey, people use it to put messages. As a funny side note, Rob, did you know that they also banned the game Plague Incorporated?
Interesting. I did not know that. I've definitely played the game a few times, and I can't see why they would.
They banned it just in March. It's one of their most recent ones, and it was just after the COVID outbreak. And I
Uh,
remember, I remember when the COVID outbreak happened, that Plague Incorporated had it was like on the sales list again, so people were buying it. People are probably using it to simulate the COVID virus starting on the Chinese mainland, which of course we know now where it originated. Animal Crossing is one thing. Here's Plague Incorporated, just because the users are deciding to start the virus in China. Come on.
well,
That's
some
stupid.
people are just gonna be that way.
Well, the flow of information, they constrain it. That's a scary thing. And people are going to find a way to get information out there. They always do.
That they do, Dave.
On the topic of being informed, why don't we take our break and let our listeners hear to a message from, us? Hang on a moment, guys. We'll be right back as we continue this little trip down memory card lane. Rob, I'm thinking about cooking up some steak for dinner tonight.
Oh yeah? How do you like to cook up your steak? Are you a cast iron skillet kind of guy?
Nah, I really prefer throwing it on the grill. You get the grill going to a really hot temperature. You do 3 minutes of direct heat on one side. You flip it. Do 3 minutes of direct heat on the other side, and then you move it over to the other part of the grill on indirect heat, and you do 3 minutes on one side, 3 minutes on the other. In 12 minutes, you have the best steak ever.
Well, what kind of grill do you like using?
You know, I think these days I really prefer cooking with charcoal.
Charcoal, you say?
Absolutely, Rob. And these days, I swear by damnation charcoal. You don't trust your family barbecues to just any charcoal.
Is Damnation Charcoal really that good?
And then some. Whether you're cooking up hot dogs for the kids or roasting the flesh of your enemies, Damnation Charcoal gets the job done. Nothing grills a steak like the flames of hell.
Would you mind grilling up a steak for me?
Sure, and I'll FedEx it all the way to you, but not before grilling it with my Damnation Charcoal. Damnation Charcoal, it burns like hell. Alright, Rob. Well, we've talked about Mortal Kombat and talked about the console wars in the early time. And, I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about the modern console wars and console exclusivity because, well, back then, having two different versions of the game, one with blood and one with sweat, was pretty abnormal thing. Having two different versions of the game is not abnormal anymore, is it?
No, it is not.
I mean, let's just start with console exclusivity games themselves. I mean, back then, and don't get me wrong, you had them back then, right? Mario has traditionally only been found on Nintendo systems, although that's really not even the case anymore nowadays, is it?
It's not.
No, I mean, it's not. You have Mario Run on the iOS.
Oh,
Did you,
I
did you,
didn't
ever,
know.
you didn't know there was a Mario game on the Apple ecosystem?
No, I did not. I don't do a whole lot of searching on the App Store.
Yeah, we've got Super Mario Run, but you had Mario only on Nintendo. You had Sonic only on Sega. That was a thing back then. I can't think of many other games that were exclusive to one or the other. Nowadays, I guess the point is nowadays you have all sorts of console exclusive game series, right? Like Gears, Halo, Killzone, God of War. What else?
Last of Us is definitely a very big exclusive for PlayStation, and with that, Uncharted.
Yep, absolutely.
And then, to another point, I can't think of any games recently that have done it, but I do recall previous years that there were even games. Oh, Soul Calibur. On that topic, I remember with Soul Calibur that you had two different versions, whether it was PlayStation or Xbox, and one of the characters was exclusive to that console. You had Darth Vader, I believe, was the PlayStation exclusive, whereas it was Yoda on the Xbox.
Oh, we just had controversy recently with that new Marvel's Avenger game because the PlayStation version's going to have Spider-Man and the Xbox version's not going to.
Really? I was unaware of that.
You know,
Yeah, because Sony owns the right.
yeah, well, because they got the Spider-Man game, exclusive Spider-Man game, so they're going to capitalize off that one there. Rabbi, frankly, I don't care. I'm not the type of gamer that buys a lot of downloadable content, admittedly. If I wait long enough and I pick up a complete version of a game, I'm going to end up with it. But if I buy a game in the beginning, more often than not, and I'm not saying I never do it, but more often than not, I'm not going to pick up the DLC. And in the case of Spider-Man specifically, I don't give a shit because if he is only exclusive to the PlayStation version, he can't be that important to the game. Get what I'm saying?
I would have to absolutely agree to that. If you have to lock a character behind a console, how much of the gameplay can they really be involved with? It's more of a kind of bonus gift, like, hey, here's this person, not so much this is detrimental to the story.
Yeah, they're not gonna develop a game for multiple platforms and then lock a character that the story is heavily based on behind one, because then you're literally developing two games, and that's just not good business strategy for anybody.
I mean, could you imagine playing the original Mario Brothers games where Sonic is your main character?
No, no, that's weird as hell. Can you imagine running through all those levels at supersonic speed? I
No, I
can't.
could not. I cannot even do it at regular speed.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Oh man, I watch speedrunners. You ever watch speedrunners?
Yes, actually, my roommate in college was a speedrunner.
Oh, what did he speedrun?
He was working on Resident Evil 4 at the time, I want to say. He was a speedrunner of the Resident Evil series primarily. He was starting to get into it when we lived together. He was starting to do his practice runs and everything, and I believe he's currently doing some kind of as for fun on his streams.
Yeah, I don't understand speedrunning. I watch an old Twitch Arcus cowboy guy wears a cowboy hat all the time. He cracks me up because he's so chill, like I pretend to be sometimes. No, I'm a very laid back person, unless you get me passionately fired up about something. But he's a
Rocket
speedrunner.
League.
Yeah, Rocket League and politics apparently. God, what does he do Nintendo in? 4 minutes, 3 minutes? I don't know. It's ridiculous how quickly he can get through it. And hold on, I'm looking it up. His speed runs. So Super Mario Brothers 1, his speedrun record right now is 4 minutes and 58 seconds. And Super Mario Brothers 2 is 8 minutes and 52 seconds. So 5 minutes. He can play the first Mario Brothers in 5 minutes.
Actually, it's funny you say that, and I know I've done a little bit of watching of the original Super Mario Brothers speedrunning, and you say 458, and I was actually watching January. The new speedrun is 4 minutes and 55 seconds,
Oh, good lord.
and it's crazy to think that for all of us that don't speedrun, 3 seconds is not a whole lot of time, but when you're talking speedrunning, even milliseconds count.
Yeah, I can't speedrun. Yeah, I don't think console wars are going away anytime soon, but they definitely got a Mortal Kombat is a very strong entry in the console wars. That's what I'm going to say about that for sure.
I would have to agree. And, with that, Dave, I think this is a perfect place to wrap it up. And I do want to say, for all those listeners, go ahead, hit us up on our website, join our Discord, www.memorycardlane.com. We'd love to hear your side of the console wars. Tell us your memories, your thoughts on it. Anything else, Dave? Any places I'm forgetting? I'm sure I'm forgetting something. So why don't you tell them that website again and anywhere else they can find us?
Memorycardlane.com. We have these wonderful resources for you to interact with us, and I'd love to hear from some of you. Come on, let's make some friends. Let's play some games together, friendos. Let's have some arguments about politics and, maybe you're a PlayStation guy, maybe you're an Xbox guy. Join our Discord, go to our Patreon. All the links are on our website. I want to hear from you. I genuinely do. Hearing from people and getting to have these conversations with people are probably my favorite part. And I have these conversations a lot on Discord where we're chatting in game, with friends at work, with friends on the phone. We all love talking about video games. I would love to talk video games with you. So yeah, I think that'll about do it. Rob, you got anything that you want to add?
I just want to thank everyone for listening. It's a great opportunity to be here, and I look forward to next week and continuing our conversations.
Well, guys, you can find me on Twitter at David is wrong if you want to converse with me on there. Or of course, come visit us. So next week, I don't know what we're gonna do for next week. Rob, have you looked at next week yet?
I have not, no.
Well, so next week is still up in the air, guys. I am currently right in the path of a hurricane. I'm gonna
Free.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to try to rush and get this episode out. Before that, I think I'm going to have success. I'll be able to edit this and get this queued up, hopefully tonight. So it'll be out at its normal time. But if that hurricane does indeed blow through and we lose power, there is a chance that we may not have an opportunity to record an episode for next week because we try to do it on a weekly basis. We try to do it specific to the week that these episodes release. And of course, if we don't have an opportunity to record because I am out of power, that could be an issue. So there may be an episode next week. There may not be an episode next week. If by any chance there isn't one next week, of course, we'll be back the following week. It shouldn't be a problem for that long. But right now, everything is kind of up in the air. So come say hi on our Discord, find out, how everything's going and when the next episode's going to be, and we'll go from there. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan, Dave. And with that, we just want to say we look forward to seeing you next week as we take a stroll down Memory Card Lane.